Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Story. And I'm your host, Joe Finney. Today, I'm running solo in order to talk to you about one of my lifelong passions, and that's photography. And I'm going to talk to you about the top 5 photography styles that moves me. If you're interested in the body of work that I've created thus far, head over to YouTube and stop by iJoe58 Media and look in the About section for the links to my body of work. And while you're there, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would definitely appreciate your support. We'll dive into my top 5 photography styles and the ones that evoke the most feeling in me when we return. Welcome back. If you're a photographer, have you ever been asked, what type of photographer are you? As if you're mandated or expected to stay within certain lanes or in a box. You see, photography has been my passion for more than 50 years, but I've never placed myself in a certain category. I've never had to do that before. I typically photograph what interests me. Now, as a photographer, you're not bound to any style of photography. If you are a war photographer and there's no war, what would you do? You may be the best for a certain style, but that doesn't mean that you cannot engage in another style. If there's no war, you'll have to find another passion to apply your skill. So my advice to anyone starting out in photography would be to spread your creative wings and try whatever gives you pleasure. But first, do it in a manner whilst following the appropriate ethical rules, laws, and proper etiquette for the municipality that you are operating in. And 2, if you must make a living in photography, you might want to do some research to see which area is in demand, because some are more demanding than others, or in demand more than others. Now, I think I'm best known for my old abandoned buildings images. And nowadays they call that urbex, urban exploration. I'm also known for my collective typewriters, calm floor and water shots, cityscapes, as well as my collection of doors and windows and old automobiles. Love taking photographs of automobiles, especially the rustic patina type. I've been told that I have a gift for capturing unique perspectives on the familiar. Well, I'm not sure about that, but what I do is try to take a different approach, and I do that through careful composition and use of vantage points, which create contrast for me. Yeah, I became interested in photography at a very early age. I was somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. And I do have a reminder picture of myself when I was 13 years old. But that reminds me that I was much younger than 13. So somewhere around 8 to 10 years old. But it was not until later that I truly immersed myself into the craft. And this wasn't until I joined the military and I was shipped out to a place called Mainz, Gunzenheim, Germany. And that was in 1978. And this is where I purchased my first 35 millimeter camera. It was a Pentax K1000. Didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted a nice camera. And at the time, Pentax and Minolta were the top cameras in my price range on the market. Eventually, I enrolled in a film development class at Army Fenton Airfield. Or I guess they would call it was Fenton Army Airfield. And that was in Mainz, Fenton, Germany. And while I was stationed at a place called Lee Barracks, I was stationed with the 8th Infantry Division there. I traveled the world since then, and during that time, traveled the world by way of the military. And as such, it provided me with the opportunity to develop and create a well-diverse perspective on life and on cultures. And I tried to capture some of that in the images that I collected along the way. But as far back as I can remember, I've been drawn to lifeless trees, old patina, antique vehicles, typewriters, especially the trees. Sometimes there's this urge that come upon me that wants to go out and capture trees, because for some reason I see life in the lifeless. You know, they're lifeless, but they're still standing. I see the same in dilapidated and decayed ruins. As an immense love for antiques and collectibles, I can see that, and for some reason, it affects my mood. I've truly been fortunate enough to work for the federal government and state government agencies that has contributed to my ability to constantly expand my portfolio to include images from several different states and, well, as several different European countries. These are mostly countries where I've served the military, and as a result, I've somewhat perfected 5 photograph styles. Now, there are many, many different photograph styles, and I've tried quite a few, but I narrowed mine down for this talk to the 5 top styles. And I'm going to talk to you about those in a minute here, but they're in no particular order. So first up on my list is fine art photography. Now, one might ask, what is fine art photography? I like the sound of it. Fine art photography. Well, fine art photography is actually created by the photographer. And this photographer is using his images as a means to bring an idea, maybe a concept, a message, or he could be dealing with his emotions and he wants to bring that to life, and he want to do that in his imagery. Now, fine art photography is also known in some sectors as photographic art or artistic photography. Now, this term, fine art photography, sounds great, but it has no universal agreed meaning or definition. It's created in accordance with the creative vision of the cameraman to fulfill his vision and his vision only. And as I was mentioning, his vision could be a concept, it could be a message that he wants to convey, it could be his emotions, but it's based on the cameraman and what he's trying to convey to his viewers. However, it may convey a specific meaning to him, but a totally different meaning to his viewers. So the artist and the viewer may not even have the same meaning when they gaze upon this image. Now, fine art photography or fine art images, they're often framed. They can be framed, and they're, as a matter of fact, some have even been placed in galleries. Some are displayed in commercial buildings, in homes. There are many different venues where fine art images are utilized. Sometimes fine art photography overlaps with other genres of photography, such as photojournalism and fashion photography. There's a bit of overlap in those. And as a matter of fact, in the large array of styles, there's a lot of overlapping. Now, one of the most popular photographers, Ansel Adams, he's considered an exemplar, meaning that he is used to describe certain types of fine art. He was a fine art landscaper, and his photos were mostly black and white, and they were considered, some of the best on the market. He had some stunning images that captured the vastness of America's national parks. Now, my featured photos for the fine art photography is titled Grazing Horses. So after each one of these styles, I'm going to give you my featured piece of artwork. And most of these, as a matter of fact, I think all of these that I feature here in this talk can be found at joe-finney.pixels.com. So that's joe-finney.pixels.com. And at that location, you'll find, I think I've got about 400 and maybe 445 or so images on that site. Now, I won't put any more there because they're not secured there. And I've had one image of the 8th Infantry Division. I think that image has been viewed, I can't remember exactly how many times, but thousands of times, and never sold one. So it tells me that people that visit that site sometimes take those images without contributing anything to the author or the photographer. So I won't put any more there. I'll leave what's there, but I won't put any more. Now, I must say, fine art is one of my favorite styles. I'll let you know that before we move on to the second one on the list. So the second one on the list is urban exploration photography. Urban exploration photography is also called urbex. Now, urbex focuses on capturing images of abandoned and dilapidated buildings or dilapidated places, etc., etc. I love this particular area as well. I have a body of work that deals with dilapidated places, and the area that I told you to go to before, when you go by YouTube and you go into the About section, in that About section there's a link to where my dilapidated dwellings part 1 and part 2. I have a book there, a coffee table book with dilapidated buildings. Now, urbex is often utilized in areas, mostly abandoned areas. And often these locations require photographers to sometimes trespass on private property, which is not the best thing to do. And it brings into question the legality of the images that they capture. And it also affects the type of shots that they get while they're there. However, there is a group there of young photographers that has a wide array of camera gear whereby they can, instead of venturing on to property that is considered off limits, they can use their large cameras with or lenses with the large focal length, and they can, make some good images from afar without having to trespass on someone else's property. And also, it is kind of dangerous because sometimes you're entering into these buildings where the structure is not very sound. Especially you're dealing in an area where the ambient light is filtered and you can't really see where you're going. So therefore, a cameraman has to have a range of camera gear and techniques that can enable him to accomplish his missions without going above and beyond into the illegal area of photography. So now my featured photo for urbex is titled Family Casa Painter. Family Casa Painter is that's a single family home, about roughly 970 some square feet. Used to be. It's no longer standing now. As a matter of fact, it has been totally moved away. It was demolished and moved away. But you can see a picture of it in the Dilapidated Dwellings Part 1, I think, and maybe in Part 2 as well. That is and was my childhood home. It fell into disarray when my mother passed away and no one else was living there. But it stayed standing until 2002, I think. And then my brother moved back to that area, and there was no way that they could have brought that house back. So he went on and had it demolished and moved away. So that's my featured photo for urbex. It's titled Family Casa Painter. Now, some of these you can, based on the title, you can Google it and it'll bring it up. Okay, so third on my list. Third is street photography. And it captures its name from exactly what it is. It's street photography, the art of capturing a scene in a public place, particularly on the street. Many of the types of photographers are also considered to be candid in nature. When you're capturing street photography, it could. This is one that could cross the line. Remember, we talked about some of these. The lines are sort of blurred, and this is one: street photography and candid photography, somewhat the same. So like I said, many of these types of photographers are also considered to be candid in nature, usually because it's unstaged and the shots are done spontaneously. Now, there is a caveat to this, and that is, depending on the country that you're in, maybe the city or state, what municipality that you're in, there are consent laws that you have to take into consideration when taking photographs of people in the public. Now, being aware of these laws is important, and you have to know what the laws are in the area where you're visiting. It could be costly if you're not aware of that and you cross the line. Now, my featured photograph for this area, for street photography, is titled DC Souvenirs. And as a matter of fact, I have two for this particular style. One is DC Souvenirs, and the other is Cattle Drive. Those are the two that I chose for this one. I like both of them. I think that's why I gave you two, because I like both of them. So the fourth on my list, and we've almost talked about this one already, but it's candid photography. And candid photography is a type of photography that it removes the posing aspect of the equation, with the photographers taking shots of people in motion, and they're done spontaneously or by surprise. But the photographer typically aim to capture their subject in a natural state without needing the subject to pose for them in order for them to get the right image. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the subject is not aware that their photos being taken. I mean, they know that they're being photographed, and in cases they've already given their consent because they're allowing you to do it. But consent is still needed if you're taking pictures of someone without their knowledge, and you're going to be utilizing, especially if you're utilizing them for commercial purposes. Now, if you're taking the pictures and you're just keeping them as, your private memoir, your keepsake, then that's a different story. Falls on a totally different ramifications. But if you're utilize them for commercial property, commercial means, then you would want to make sure that you're following all the rules. Now, there is a subset or a subcategory of candid photography, and that's called secret photography. Secret photography is considered a subset of candid photography, and it occurs when the subjects are totally unaware of their photograph. They don't even know that they're being photographed. They don't see anybody, or they don't Maybe they're in an area where they're easily accessible. Lots of people maybe, and they're being photographed secretly, and they have no knowledge of it. Now, this is an area where you want to be careful, because if you're not sure about what you're doing, then it could come back to bite you in the end. So just be careful and make sure you know the laws and the rules in the area which you're operating in. Now, my featured photo for Candid Photography is titled Chesapeake's Finest. Chesapeake Finest. That's my featured pick for that style. And fifth and last on my list is cityscape photography. And cityscape photography is really it's the urban counterpart of landscape photography, because cityscape photography captures images of city skylines and certain sections of metropolis. Now, these images can be taken during the daytime or the nighttime, and they usually feature large portions of a city. You can use a wide angle lens, to capture a larger portion of the city, or to achieve those shots that would give you a better view from afar. But you can also use a telephoto lens, and that can come in handy as well to capture a smaller area of the city. Now, I have quite a few images of cityscape on Fine Art America. Now, my two featured photos for cityscape is titled 50th City, and the second one is View of Waikiki, in that order. Now, 50th City was taken from the top of an old volcano. This volcano had erupted some years ago and has been dormant for many, many years. It's called Diamond Head. At the top of Diamond Head, if you look west, you'll see the 50th City. And I titled it 50th City because Hawaii is the 50th state. And that's a beautiful sight. I mean, you can really get nice pictures from the top of Diamond Head. Well, actually, there are several different locations in Hawaii where you can take some really beautiful pictures from a higher elevation. I've taken, quite a few from a place called Round Top Road. I don't have any in this collection, but I can definitely do one later and bring those to you, probably in a YouTube video. Now, so the second one is View of Waikiki. View of Waikiki. Now, this particular photograph was taken in the front of, I think it's right around the zoo area in Waikiki. There's an old abandoned building